What has happened is a colossal military disaster. We shall go on to the end. We shall never surrender.
The call went out. We have to go to Dunkirk. Ready on the stern line.
What are you doing? You know where we're going.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Cinemaholic. What's that sound? It's the sound of German bombers. So me and Ryan are going to have to evacuate our Blu-ray sections because Germans come a-bombing with this week's review of Dunkirk. My name is Spencer Henderson, and I am a Cinemaholic.
That was probably the best intro we have ever had or ever will have. And I'm Ryan, and I'm a Cinemaholic.
So Ryan, tell us about Dunkirk. We just set the tone perfectly for this film.
Okay, so Dunkirk is, just like you said, Germans are attacking, Germans are advancing. We got to get our guys out of Dunkirk fast. This is directed by Christopher Nolan, starring the usual guys that work with Christopher Nolan, written by, you called it, Christopher Nolan. And I just want to set it off at the beginning. This is, you said it on the War of the Planet of the Apes review, this is the favorite director of all the geeks who really don't know much about movies. So everybody knows Christopher Nolan and loves him, particularly from The Dark Knight and other such hits such as Inception. But if you dig deeper into his filmography, you find classic little gems that are so golden, like Insomnia and Memento and The Prestige. And I have really been thinking about it, and I'm going to rewatch Memento, but I think it's in my top 10 all-time favorite movies. That movie is so good. That big repertoire leads us into Dunkirk, which everyone was excited about, maybe for good reasons, maybe not for good reasons. Spencer, what did you think of Dunkirk?
Okay, so I feel like recently, with that comment last week, I want to get something clear. I've told this story, I'm pretty sure, before, at least to Ryan, and that is that when I was 13 years old, I walked into a movie theater and saw The Dark Knight, and after that, movies were they were what I wanted to do. I started making movies with friends and posting them to YouTube, doing all this crazy shenanigans just because I saw The Dark Knight and was like, that was amazing. I want every movie to be that good. And for a while, it was like my favorite movie of all time. So Christopher Nolan is somebody who has had a big impact on me. And I don't mean that as like a slander, what I said last week. I just feel like he's one of the only directors now whose name is recognized in households because he's had such an influence on pop culture with the movies that Ryan was just saying, like The Dark Knight and Inception and even Interstellar, which it's kind of like conflicted. I really wanted to love Interstellar, but I didn't love Interstellar. I loved the first 2/3 of it, probably. Dunkirk is my favorite Christopher Nolan movie that he's ever made. I also think it's the best movie that he's ever made, which I don't think everybody is going to share that opinion. I was blown away by this movie. I think that this is one of the best blockbusters I've seen in the 2010s thus far. From the beginning, the opening scene of this movie, I had no idea what to expect with this movie, really. As usual, I went in blind on this. And so seeing what he did, it's really a gamble, an experiment, because there's not a lot of character development at all. We're thrown right into this situation with these guys, and the way he kind of incorporates themes that he uses throughout his filmography, such as like time and it's great in this movie. I freaking love this movie. I want to talk more, but I want to get your initial thoughts because I'm kind of nervous. You've been setting this up to make me kind of be like, oh man. So what do you think of it?
I hate it. It's garbage. No, I honestly, I really did enjoy it. I don't think I loved it as much as you, but that by no means doesn't mean that I didn't like it. That sentence made no sense, whatever I just said. I did really enjoy this movie. And I don't know if I'm ready to classify it as the best Christopher Nolan. I think this is one that I need a second watch to be able to make that decision. I was completely blown away though. For me personally, I think it was better though, having looked at reviews and kind of knowing what I was getting into, because it's so experimental and so revolutionary. I think it is going to turn a few people off. And I think I would have been caught off guard because I am a guy that really likes character development in stories. This is one of those rare exceptions where you don't necessarily need the characters to make it through the story. The cinematography is what carried this whole movie, and it was brilliant, breathtaking. I actually texted a friend, Jace, this morning, and I said, hands down, this film is going to be nominated for Oscars for sound editing, sound mixing, soundtrack, most likely best direction, possibly best picture, and definitely visual effects. The airplane fights were so stunning. And I actually would like to have a discussion another time about Christopher Nolan. Maybe we could do a whole special on that because he's such an intriguing guy. He has become the Spielberg of this generation because even Spielberg's name doesn't really carry movies anymore. I mean, the BFG, meh. Spielberg's last few movies have just kind of been meh. But Nolan is a guy whose name alone will get butts in theaters. And I would love to talk about his stance on film versus digital because he's such a purist, but he's also such a revolutionary. Like, he tries and pushes the boundaries each time. I would love to see him utilize some of the newer technology and the newer digital cameras, but 70 millimeter, I saw this movie in XD and it blew me away. This needs to be seen in the highest format possible, whether it's Cinemark XD or IMAX or 70 millimeter, whatever is the biggest format, go see this movie.
Yeah. One thing that I really stood out to me about this movie is the last time I felt this way about a movie, it was probably Mad Max Fury Road, because we talked a little bit about the character development, but to me, everything you learn about these people, you learn visually, which is something that I really, really dug about this movie. There wasn't a storyline in this movie that I didn't find completely, utterly thrilling from front to back. There isn't a second in this movie that I felt like I breathed. I was literally sitting there just on the edge of my seat the entire time from the opening sequence, which the opening sequence, there's like a moment where he catches a propaganda poster, and that sets up the horror of this situation so subtly and so well, and then it explodes literally. This movie, one thing that I read, I think on Twitter about this, is that the whole movie is the third act. The entire thing is the big action sequence at the end, and somehow amazingly he drags us out throughout the entire movie, but not in a way that ever feels boring. I never felt not completely and utterly entranced by what was going on. This movie completely worked for me. I love Mark Rylance. He's one of my favorite actors like ever, like especially after this. I thought he was so great in this movie. That main kid, I don't know his name, but the soldier who we're supposed to kind of like, he's our vessel into this world. He was brilliant in this movie. And then Tom Hardy, who maybe this movie has probably like 20, 30 pages of dialogue through the entire thing. And I love that. I love that type of stuff. And the thing that's most impressive about this movie is last year, my favorite movie of the year was Arrival. And it's because it's a blockbuster that is smart, that is compelling. When I was growing up, my favorite movies were blockbusters. They were, the original Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Jurassic Park. Those movies, lots of Spielberg titles in there, but those movies really got me interested in movies. So seeing big movies like Dunkirk or Arrival or Mad Max Fury Road that come out nowadays and have this huge power to them and bring something new to the table, but also are able to achieve that studio funding, that's when I'm at my most impressed by a movie. So I freaking love this movie. I'm going to score it. I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. Perfect movie, in my opinion. I think that this is the best movie of the year. If anything's better than this, I will be very, very surprised this year.
I will echo, and I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I loved it, and thinking about it more does influence my score. I think walking out of it, I probably would have scored it like a 9. But I really can't think of many downsides to it. Everything in a new and inventive way worked, and I'm super thrilled about that. Exactly like you said, I'm so excited that a big blockbuster like this can be smart and can be influential and experimental at the same time, and that's so refreshing. And another thing that has just kind of floored me that specifically affects the area I'm in Utah, there's like a weird taboo on rated R movies for a lot of people. And somehow this movie was able to prove that you can make an excellent war movie and still make it PG-13. I was scared to death like the whole time, and it's so engaging and enthralling. And it was never, it still got the PG-13 rating. But it still was able to convey the horror of war. And it really affected me. And I think that's going to be instrumental and why this movie is going to make so much money, because it's going to appeal to a vast majority of people, but you're also going to get the younger audience into this as well.
Yeah, it managed to show the horrors of war with being PG-13. That was the thing I think I was most nervous about walking in, was I thought that they were just going to kind of sugarcoat things. Not at all. This movie is freaking tense. Like this might be the most tense war movie I think I've ever seen from front to back. So yeah, guys, Dunkirk is something you have to go see, and go see it, like Ryan said, on the biggest theater you can find with the best sound system you can find. It is an absolutely incredible experience. Seeing
it in XD, just with the sound system alone, like you said, the whole theater shook. And there's just so many specific moments that was instrumental. And that's Nolan. He directs with such a big, broad perspective, and then he nitpicks everything. And every aspect of film is so influential in making this such an immersive film that you're in. I think it's his second shortest movie, right next to Memento, barely clocking in over.
I think it's Following. Following's his shortest movie than this one.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, but it's engaging that whole time. That, like you said, there's never a moment where you're like, okay, what am I going to eat for dinner? Or, I mean, you're in, and you're in for the ride, and it's a roller coaster. Go into it with your own expectations, though, because like I said, for me, I think that really benefited the viewing, was kind of knowing what I was getting into. But for a lot of people like you, going in blind, this is going to be a treat.
Yeah, definitely. One more question about this that I want to get your opinion on. What did you think of the score? I know you said the sound mixing, sound editing. I think it's a lock on winning the Oscar thus far, and probably will for sure. The sound, I never really notice. It's very rare that I notice this movie has great sound, but this movie, holy crap, the sound is amazing. So the music incorporated a lot with the sound is one thing I noticed. What did you think of the score in this?
No, I agree. Yeah, if it doesn't win, it's definitely going to be nominated. I mean, it's a unique thing. Hans Zimmer and Nolan have just kind of found their jam. Hans Zimmer just flat out is a brilliant composer, but these two work so well together. And that was like the thing with Inception, is that the soundtrack and the score was so pivotal to that movie. And you came out, and even still today, I'll just be like doing something, and then you just hear that score, and it just sticks with you, and you can instantly name, oh, that's Inception. I think this is going to be the same thing, that Hans Zimmer just does those big booming scores that work. And there's a moment that I don't really want to spoil, but there's a moment towards the end of the movie where it goes from suspense, and then it turns into the resolution, and the score in that moment was spot on. Best of the year, best of years, I think. I mean, it was just so good.
Yeah, excellent movie. We're probably going to just keep waxing poetic about this if we don't stop. So you guys can follow me on Twitter at SpinnyHand. Also, follow me on this new crazy app, Stardust, at SpinnyHand, where me and Ryan give reactions. And Ryan, what's your username on Twitter and Stardust?
So I'm Rye_Gordon, and I've also downloaded Letterboxd if you're into that kind of stuff. Check that out. You keep track of your movies, what movies you've watched and stuff. But I'm in love with Stardust. It's one of my favorite things to come out of a movie and immediately give a reaction. And then, of course, continue to follow us on here on YouTube. Subscribe so that you can get the full reviews, because Stardust limits you to 30 seconds, which is awesome. It's fun, but I love going in depth. So follow us here, subscribe, and stay tuned for one of the best animated movies, which we're going to be talking about next week, the Emoji Movie.
Wait, are we talking about Emoji Movie, or are we talking about Miss Atomic Blonde?
Well, let's talk about Atomic Blonde.
Okay. It's a Miss Atomic Blonde, right?
I think it's just Atomic Blonde.
You know, I'm probably there's a killer song called Miss Atomic Bomb, and probably just getting those mixed up. So they should play that song in the movie. So yeah, Atomic Blonde. I'm not seeing the Emoji Movie. I am totally calling for a, what's that? What's the word where you say, we're not going to go see this, and you picket it? I can't think of the word.
Let's make up a word.
We're going to
shenanigans this. That's the only word, shenanigans.
Shenanigans. I'm going to think of it as soon as we end this stream. But yeah, anyways, guys, we're way off topic. Ryan, sign us out.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for listening to us ramble and rant and love this movie. Check it out. Subscribe.
We're going to picket it. Is it picket? No, it's not picket. Okay.
I don't know. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.